समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
This episode is being recorded on March 25. Now, March 25, is this such a significant day for us in India? What is it that happened on March 25? Did something historic happen for India? Was somebody famous born, or did somebody famous or important pass away? Nothing of the sort. You ask people in Pakistan, what is March 25? Chances are many will not remember, but many of the others, particularly of the older generation, would prefer to not remember, would prefer to forget it, because this was among the most forgettable dates in Pakistan's history. Ask anybody in Bangladesh, they will know what March 25 was, and their view of it would depend today on how they view their own history, the history of their own liberation and the creation of Bangladesh, because there is a lot of revisionism going on there, particularly under the current regime. After that street revolution that led to the departure of, or the exiling of, Sheikh Hasina, and the ushering in of this informal government there. There will be debate on what started on March 25, how it ended, but nobody would dispute that what started on March 25 was the process of liberation of Bangladesh, and it became an independent sovereign country by December 16 the same year in 1971. So we take you back to March 25 of 1971. Today is the anniversary of the day, March 25, that Pakistan Army's crackdown in East Pakistan, what was then East Pakistan, started. That was called Operation Searchlight, and that's the reason I said March 25 is a day that many of us in India do not particularly remember. We remember 3rd of December when the 71 war started, or the 16th when the surrender took place, the victory day or the Vijay Divas, Bangladesh liberation, but we don't particularly remember March 25, but for Bangladeshis it's important. Nevertheless, Operation Searchlight, Pakistani Army's big crackdown in its own more populous eastern wings. Just think about it. In 1971, on a lower population base than today, obviously because populations have risen since then, East Pakistan had 2 crore more people, 20 million more people than West Pakistan. That's why East Pakistan had many more seats in National Assembly, 169, compared to West Pakistan's 132. And these were swept by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, which gave him a majority in the National Assembly, and he was not to be a Bengali was not going to be allowed to become Prime Minister of Pakistan. That's when Yahya Khan again enforced martial law and said National Assembly will not meet. That is the background. Now, what lay underneath this? What lay underneath this was the belief that Pakistani army is what is best for Pakistan. It keeps Pakistan together. It keeps Pakistan's ideology together. It guarantees Pakistan's unity and also territorial integrity. And that is the justification that Pakistani army used to start that crackdown, or Operation Searchlight, on 25th of March, on this date in 1971. That's why this is also a good day for us to reflect on the Pakistani army, which has been such a key factor in the subcontinent's politics. It's the preeminent, decisive factor, the most essential institutional factor or political factor in its own country, which is Pakistan. In fact, even as we speak, the Pakistani army chief has just told the parliamentary committee it's time for Pakistan to become a hard state, as if more than 65 years, almost 70 years of army rule has not made Pakistan a hard state. How much harder does he want to make it? How will he make it any harder? He's already gutted his constitution in such a way that he can pretty much serve as the chief forever. And in any case, the Pakistanis now have a system where the army does not have to take power. They can exercise power without formally holding it. That said, it becomes even more important for us to reflect on the Pakistani army, this fascinating, controversial, all-powerful institution in Pakistan. So let me start by asking a couple of trick questions. What's your view on Pakistan's army? Is it a good army or a bad army? A great army or an evil army? Is it an invincible army or an eminently beatable one? Is it a Pakistani nationalist army or just another Islamic Lashkar in uniform with nukes? The answer can depend on which side you happen to be. As an Indian partisan, I can of course use all or some of the many positive choices there, some of the positive choices there, while being an Indian partisan. But then I will perhaps have to live in exile somewhere else. Or we can all be like our primetime warriors and simply continue to insist that Pakistani army is exactly as portrayed in Bollywood war movies. Our idea of animated commando comics, bumbling, cowardly, easy to roll over and unsoldierly, particularly when faced with Sunny Deol or even a lesser equivalent like Sunil Shetty or Akshay Kumar. A clinical, professional assessment of the Pakistani army, its mind, motivations, track record and ongoing thought processes is, however, the most crucial need for those analyzing, debating and most importantly, guarding the national interest in India. I take you back to 25th of March 1971. Why did the Pakistani army start that crackdown in more than a half over a majority of its own population? Because they thought they were the only ones with the wisdom, the strength, patriotism and wherewithal to protect their country and to keep it together. To that extent, it's a very unusual institution because this institution has never accepted the idea that they will be an authority above it, above it which is elected, which is based on the constitution. No. Even when people have come into power in Pakistan with 2/3 majority, this army has still had its way as if nothing happened because what they need to run, essential levers of Pakistani decision making, society, governance, they never let go. The essential complication and challenge of dealing with Pakistan, therefore, is resolving multiple dilemmas. Are Pakistan, the ideological state, and its army the same entity or different? Can you deal with the state and thereby with people by leaving aside the army, or vice versa, which means can you deal with the army while leaving aside the state or the people? And if you have to deal with both, that is the state/people and the army, who do you deal with first? And is it possible to even do so? And every Friday afternoon, as I psych myself into writing another national interest, my greatest motivation is a complexity. We are professional writers. We can easily do wordsmithy and spin 1300 stirring words that nobody would have any problem with, right? There are some words. I can in fact go to ChatGPT. I tried these things sometimes for fun, for a lark. ChatGPT, write 1300 words or 1250 words like Shekhar Gupta writing on the state of Delhi's politics, right? Or ChatGPT, write 1300 words on Shekhar Gupta's view on the state of India's cricket. What comes out is actually not so bad. I mean, I will not share it with you. Some of you might say that's better than what I actually do. But leave that aside. I look for a complexity. I look for a complexity when it comes to opinion, because the complexity challenges your mind to search for answers open to arguments, so that there is not one conclusive argument. I can provoke you, we can have an argument, we can have a disagreement. That's why I would say, in honesty, applying the national interest principle, I'm not able to tick each one of the negative boxes out of the choices of objectives for Pakistani army that I just listed. Bad, evil, eminently beatable, just an Islamic Lashkar in uniform, and be done with it. That will be enormously fashionable today, but this will not be a view professional soldiers in our own army would have of their arch enemies. That's why they have come out on top in the final analysis in every military engagement in Pakistan with Pakistan since 1947. That's because they did not ridicule the Pakistani army. They did not see them as jokers like commando comic idiots of the kind that are some of our Bollywood movies show, or the manner in which they are portrayed on many of our warrior channels, but because they took them very seriously, professionally, understood their method, and countered it accordingly professionally. When in doubt on what is best for your own skin, find an eminent foreigner to make your point. I will therefore borrow a line from Professor Stephen P. Cohen, the late Professor Stephen P. Cohen, globally respected scholar on India and Pakistan and their armies. So he wrote seminal books on the Indian army and the Pakistani army. This is the 1984 edition of the Pakistan Army and duly signed by the author in April 1985. In fact, it was the first time that I met Steve Cohen when he came to the India Today newsroom and gave me this copy of the Pakistan Army. Now, in this book, he described the Pakistani army as the finest army in the world. Mark my words carefully. He described it as the finest army in the world, but one which had never won a war, right? The finest army in the world, but one which had never won a war. Ziaul Haq banned his book, but would lionize Cohen and call him for a meal anytime he was in town. In fact, the Pakistanis, particularly in the Zia era, sought him out all the time, got him to visit Pakistan. Zia himself would host him for dinner, but at the same time, he had banned his book. Steve Cohen said that he asked Ziaul Haq at one of those meals that, "Oh, you are so kind to me, you give me so much importance, you even lionize me, you get me to speak at your academies, and yet you have banned my book. How does this make sense?" Zia said, "Professor Sahab," I'm quoting Steve Cohen, Zia said, "Professor Sahab, I really loved your book, except how could you say that Pakistan's army never won a war? And in that case, what about 1965? Today, it will also believe, the Pakistani army will also believe that it won a second war against the Soviets in Afghanistan and then a third war against the Americans also in Afghanistan. Of course, in each case, then those fighting for it were Afghans. This is the real problem with the Pakistani army. It is delusional. It is tough, audacious, efficient. See how audacious it is of me to say these things. It is tough, efficient, audacious, but its brains sit in the neither and wrong part of its anatomy instead of the head. It has not only institutionalized the thought that it won the 1965 war, but it has also in the course of time resumed that self-hypnosis by reviving the 6th of September every year as Defense of Pakistan celebrations, as if they won that 65 war, and they also, not every year, but every now and then, hold parades to mark that mythical 1965 victory. The problem in Pakistan is, at most of the time, and definitely at this one, nobody would dare question it because they've just gutted their constitution, as I just told you. So this army chief has almost become chief until he wishes to remain so, and he controls everything, including a committee, a top-level committee, which oversees investments into Pakistan. In India, I can get away with saying, based on the works of many fine soldiers who recorded the history of 1965, that it was a war of mutual incompetence that led to a stalemate within 3 weeks. In fact, I've written this multiple times, but not in Pakistan. In Pakistan, to say that this is a war that Pakistan did not win, you will have to be very audacious, and definitely you will be in much bigger trouble if you were writing in Urdu. In English, you might still get away with some of it. Pakistan's army has a lot going for it. It is a formidable fighting force and still the only sizable Islamic army in the world capable of absorbing technology, following orders of its commanders like professionals, and take casualties in real combat. In fact, I used deliberately the expression Islamic army, although Pakistani army is structured like a modern British tradition army. Reason I particularly use that Islamic description is the new US Vice President J.D. Vance said just the other day that the way things are going, Britain could become the first Islamic state with nuclear weapons. He forgot that Pakistan, in fact, is fully an Islamic nation, an Islamic republic, which has had nuclear weapons now at least for 27, 28 years, at least since 1987, 1988. Pakistani army's problem is it sees its role as being much wider, greater, ideological, moral, and even holier than that of any other professional military. That is where the problems arise for their country and ours too. Pakistan is going through a phase unprecedented in its politico-military history. Although I sometimes wonder that any time I write something about this or I say something about this issue, I can call it unprecedented because they have the power to create a precedent at will whenever they want to. However, it is still, I would say at this point, unprecedented in Pakistan's politico-military history when the GHQ has not seized power openly but controls it fully. And now it has also got an elected government to destroy, in fact, almost fully rewrite Pakistan's constitution in its critical areas. In a series of maneuvers since the last elections, installed a new coalition into power and removed Imran Khan, it has destroyed not just the political but even the moral authority of their own government, because this is their government. They wanted this government. They kept Imran Khan and his party out of the elections. They did not want him anywhere near power. And yet they have destroyed the political and moral authority of this government, their own government. People by and large in Pakistan, including a lot of the intelligentsia, would have more faith in the army as an institution than the elected government of lazy thieves. The Chief General Asim Munir, who comes from a family of preachers, very devout himself, is now quite controversial and does not have the same aura as many of his predecessors might have had, because he's seen as somebody who usurped not just political power, that's routine in Pakistan, he also usurped the chief's position because the previous government was manipulated by him and those around him. It's a more complex story that we'll talk about at some other point of time, but he does not quite have the same aura or the same kind of, he's not the kind of cult figure that many of his predecessors have been. He's not the most popular Pakistani general ever. Although now he's sounding angry and frustrated, and the more angry and the more frustrated he sounds, the more skeptical the Pakistani public opinion gets of him. Because Pakistani public opinion, I would say, still would prefer Imran Khan, and they think that he, General Asim Munir, has played a key role, he and the army have played a key role in keeping Imran out of power. That's the reality of Pakistan. At which point we can raise our trick question. Never mind what's happening right now. Right now is a tough time for Pakistani army, and they've gone through periods like this. They were in bad odor after losing in 1971, and after the surrender, that lasted a couple of years. Then they were again in very bad odor and very unpopular, say in 2006, 2007, in the late Musharraf era. And that is when the slogans first started coming out. ये जो दहशतगर्दी है, इसके पीछे वर्दी है. Those periods apart, generally Pakistani army has drawn a great deal of awe and respect within their own public opinion. The question is, in principle, does the Pakistani army deserve it? And that's a good point to raise on the anniversary of Operation Searchlight. Has Pakistani army done enough to deserve that special position in their society and their polity? For the answers, just consider what it promised. If its central premise behind justifying its preeminent position was winning Kashmir, it has failed after 75 years of fighting, 77 years of fighting. Now it's a 78th year, in fact. In fact, today Pakistan has less of Kashmir than it had in 1948 at the ceasefire time, having lost Siachen and territory in Kargil, Turtuk, etc. After that, it kept a little bit of the Cham salient after 71, but that's very small. Net, it has less of Kashmir, much less of Kashmir than it had in 1948 at the time of ceasefire. If the proposition was that only Pakistani army can protect Pakistan's territorial and ideological frontiers, it vaporizes the moment you mention the word Bangladesh, or now you mention Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or you mention the rebellion in Balochistan. Pakistan lost a large part of its territory and a majority of its population, thus knocking the ideological basis of the two-nation theory that led to its founding. And this happened under the active watch of the Pakistani army. An independent Bangladesh, whatever the crisis there right now, an independent Bangladesh is now doing much better than Pakistan. In fact, I will give you a factoid. If in 1971, East Pakistan, that is what became Bangladesh, its population was 2 crores more than West Pakistan's. Today, Bangladesh's population is almost 6 to 7 crores less than West Pakistan. That's because of the social. That is indicative of how social indicators have improved in Bangladesh compared to West Pakistan. Its birth rates are much lower, comparable with the most disciplined states in India. Its per capita income, it was seen to be a basket case in 1971. Today, its per capita income is more than one and a half times higher than Pakistan's. In fact, in the next few years, 4 or 5 years, it will be twice as much as Pakistan's. Let's leave comparisons aside for a moment. If Pakistani army's claim to preeminence is that it defeated the Soviets, the fact is it is still fighting the Afghans, including their own jihadi offspring within its own territories, that is Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Over these decades, this vaunted army has lost Pakistan territory, ideology, financial and intellectual capital, ruined its institutions, destroyed its democracy, the respect for its passport, and, like it or not, reduced its status to a globally acknowledged University of Jihad, Ivy League or not, don't ask me. This comes at the cost of much of the country's budget. Time to repeat a telling point I have made often. When I first went to Pakistan in 1985, in fact, this book is signed by Steve Cohen in 1985, as you can see, the country looked much richer and modern than ours. It had to, because its per capita income then was 65% higher than India's. That is about the time it chose, encouraged by the success in Afghanistan, to start using cross-border terror as a weapon against India, hoping India will bleed, decline and die. Right? Tukde tukde ho jayega. On the contrary, India has risen and Pakistan has hit new depths. A 60% lead on per capita incomes over India is now nearly 40 to 50% deficit, widening at about 5 to 6% every year, which is the net effect of India's higher economic growth and Pakistan's higher population growth. The Pakistani army has therefore lost its captive nation, its own nation, the war, whatever its claims at the many battles it has actually fought very well with ours. Its joy at orchestrating the deaths of a few Indians once in a while in a terror attack is no more than self-destructive. That is self-destructive joy. It's the finest army in the world that's destroying its own country first. I would say that this process also accentuated. This had started much earlier. They started in the mid-50s, 1950s, when they took over power for the first time. But it went into in a completely different zone on 25th of March on this date in 1971, when they launched Operation Searchlight against a majority of their own country.